In 1983, at Lincoln High School in Ohio, there was a classroom on the 3rd floor that was permanently locked. Students called it Room 305. No one was allowed inside, and teachers avoided any questions about it. Rumor had it that in the late 70s, a student named Rebecca Collins stayed behind after class to finish an assignment. Hours later, the janitor found the classroom empty, except for her notebook, filled with frantic writing that no one could explain. The last line simply read, "Don't let it out." After that night, the school locked the door permanently. But students who stayed late for after-school activities claimed to hear noises coming from that room, scratching, dragging sounds, and sometimes a girl's voice whispering their names. One night, in 1992, two seniors, Mark and Angela, dared each other to break into Room 305. They forced the door open with a metal bar. Inside, the desks were still arranged. As if frozen in time, Rebecca's notebook lay on the teacher's desk, untouched by dust. Mark picked it up. As he flipped through the pages, the lights in the hallway began to flicker. Angela swore she saw a shadow move across the blackboard. Then, without warning, the heavy classroom door slammed shut. They screamed for help, pounding on the door, but no one came. When the janitor found them hours later, the two were sitting silently at their desks, their eyes wide open, staring at the blackboard. Neither of them remembered what had happened, but both dropped out of school shortly after. Today, the room remains sealed. Teachers still refuse to talk about it. Sometimes, late at night, students say you can hear the sound of chalk scratching words onto the board, though no one is inside. Blackwood High School in Ohio. It's always been an ordinary place until the winter of 1983. That was the year students began whispering about the disappearance of a sophomore named Evelyn Carter. It started like any other Friday. Evelyn, a quiet, bookish girl, was last seen leaving the library after detention. The librarian, Mrs. Daniels, remembered her packing up her books at 6:15 p.m., but Evelyn never made it home. By Saturday morning, her parents reported her missing. The police searched the school grounds extensively. Her notebooks were found in her locker, but her winter coat was missing. Oddly, the back door of the library, the one that led into a poorly lit service corridor, was unlocked. Nobody ever used that hallway. Over the next few weeks, the school tried to move on, but strange things began to happen. Students walking past the library after dark reported hearing whispering voices, though the room was empty. The janitor, Mr. Lewis, swore he saw a figure small, with long hair, dart across the hallway and vanish through a locked door. The strangest incident came when a group of seniors stayed late to decorate for prom. At around 10 p.m., the lights flickered, and one girl screamed when she saw a pale face pressed against the glass of the library door. By spring, Blackwood High had developed a reputation. Students dared each other to sneak into the library after hours. Some claimed they heard scratching on the walls. Others said they saw shadows moving between the shelves. But the most disturbing event happened in 1987, 4 years later, when the school expanded and construction crews opened the sealed service corridor. Behind the wall, they found a hidden maintenance room abandoned, covered in dust. On the floor was a tattered winter coat. Inside the pocket was Evelyn's student ID. The room also had something else. Messages scratched into the brick wall. With fingernails, words like please, cold, and still here. After that discovery, teachers avoided the subject. The official story remained unsolved disappearance. But students knew better. Even now, decades later, alumni say if you visit Blackwood High at night, the library lights sometimes flicker on their own. And if you walk down the service corridor, you might hear the sound of fingernails dragging. Across the wall, a girl whispering, "Don't leave me here." In the small town of Ashford, Massachusetts, stood a school with a grim reputation, Ravenwood High. The building was nearly a century old, with ivy climbing its walls and a reputation for being haunted. Most stories were just rumors, until the incident of Room 313. Room 313 was an abandoned classroom on the top floor. Teachers said it was closed because of water damage, but students whispered a different story, that in the 1960s, a boy named Thomas Whitaker had died during detention there. According to the legend, Thomas was a troublemaker. On a cold winter afternoon, he was kept late in room 313 as punishment. When the janitor came to lock up, Thomas was gone. The only thing left behind was his chair, tipped over near the window. Some believed he had jumped. Others thought something darker had happened. His body was never found by the late 1980s. Room 313 was sealed off. But even sealed, it had a strange presence. Students walking past swore they heard chalk scratching on the blackboard inside. Others claimed to see faint lights flickering beneath the door. One autumn night in 1994, a group of seniors dared each other to break in. They managed to pry the door open with a crowbar. Inside, the room was coated in dust, but everything looked untouched. Desks, chairs, even the chalkboard. One girl, Amanda Collins, nervously laughed as she picked up a piece of chalk and wrote her name on the board. The moment she did, the air turned icy. The chalk in her hand snapped in half. Then slowly letters began to appear on the board on their own. At first faint, then darker. Get out. The group panicked and ran. But Amanda swore she felt someone pull her hair hard before she reached the door. In the weeks after, Amanda changed. She stopped talking in class, stopped hanging out with friends. Teachers noticed she often stared blankly, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then, one night in November, Amanda's parents found her missing from her bed. Her window was open, curtains fluttering in the cold wind. On her desk was a single piece of chalk. Written on her bedroom wall were the words, "I'm still here." The police searched the school again, tearing apart room 313. They found nothing except, hidden in the corner of the old chalkboard frame, a faint etching, Thomas. To this day, Ravenwood High refuses to reopen room 313, students say. You walk past late at night, you can hear the sound of chalk writing by itself. If you dare to enter, you might see your own name appear on the board. Only this time, you won't leave to tell the story. In the quiet town of Hollow Creek, there stood a red brick high school that every teenager both loved and feared. Hollow Creek High. It was known for its creaking hallways, its ancient lockers, and most of all, its dark, unfinished basement. No student was ever allowed down there. Teachers would snap if anyone even mentioned it. The door to the basement was always locked with a heavy chain and a faded sign above read, "Do not enter, hazardous." But everyone knew the real reason it wasn't about safety. It was because of the incident in 1977. That year, a group of students had been serving detention. Supervising teacher, Mr. Callahan, stepped away to make a phone call, leaving the kids alone. Out of boredom, the students found a way into the basement through a maintenance hatch in the janitor's closet. The next morning, only 3 of the 4 students came back. The missing boy, Ethan Carter, was never seen again. The 3 who survived swore they'd heard him scream, then silence, followed by footsteps coming from the dark when no one was there. After that night, the hatch was sealed and the basement locked forever, but rumors lingered. Students who had classes near the stairwell swore they heard whispers rising up through the cracks. At night, the janitors reported the sound of lockers slamming, though the hallways were empty. Some even claimed they saw a figure thin, pale, with sunken eyes lurking near the basement door. Years later, in 2002, a curious sophomore named Melissa Parker decided to test the legend. Armed with a flashlight and her camcorder, she slipped into the school after hours with 2 friends, Jason and Claire. They managed to break the chain and push the heavy door open. The air inside was damp and suffocating. Pipes ran across the ceiling, dripping water onto the cracked floor. All their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, like the basement was swallowing every sound. Melissa filmed everything, narrating with a shaky laugh. So, here we are. Hollow Creek's infamous basement. Then, they heard it a slow dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. Jason swung his flashlight. "Probably rats," he muttered. But the sound was too heavy for that. They pressed deeper. In the far corner, Melissa spotted something: an old student desk, broken and rusted. Carved into the wood, faint but readable, was a name: Ethan. They could react. The lights of their flashlights flickered. The camcorder went dead. The dragging sound grew louder, now joined by soft whispers. Rising all around them, Claire screamed when she felt a hand brush her ankle, cold and bony. Jason pulled her toward the stairs, yelling for Melissa to run, but Melissa stood frozen, eyes wide as a pale figure emerged from the darkness. It was Ethan, or what was left of him. His skin was gray, stretched tight across his bones. His mouth opened unnaturally wide as he whispered, "Stay with me." Jason and Claire barely dragged Melissa out. By the time they reached the stairwell, she had dropped the camcorder. The next day, Melissa didn't show up for school, or the day after. Her parents called the police, but no trace of her was ever found. Only her camcorder was recovered, lying just outside the basement door. The tape inside was blank except for the last 5 seconds. It showed the basement wall, faint letters scratched into the stone. One more. Today, Hollow Creek High keeps the basement sealed. But students still whisper that on some nights, you can hear footsteps behind the door waiting for the next curious soul to wander in.